and welcome to the Woodshed Sports Report. My name is Conrad Wood, and hey, a little bit of upbeat EDM to get you through this Wednesday. I forgot to get the chair to a little bit of a set dressing change, as we do now have the Cavalry FC Star Wars kit joining the wall behind me. Hey, I gotta take that other jersey to go get signed out in Okotoks today, as the rain has gone away and sunshine hopefully here to stay in Calgary and area. But we are live on YouTube and Twitch, of course. So if you are around, give us a hi, give us a wave, say something in the chat so I can know we're alive. Of course, a interesting day, and I do have to say, it is going to be a shorter stream today. I had to take my car in for repairs, and it is finally ready to go be picked up. I got to do that before I head out to Okotoks tonight. Of course, wearing the Wild hat, we are 8 days away from the World Cup. I believe I am going to do a show on that on Monday, purely focused on the World Cup. Of course, we'll do our playoff recaps as we are doing at every show. And hey, we'll talk a little bit about that, and I think we'll transfer it into talking about the Flames and their options with the trade market, how gaining that first could potentially mean the Flames could potentially look into moving a key player from their roster. That's kind of been talked about a little bit recently. But we will talk about game one of the Stanley Cup Final. It's a wild back and forth game. I kind of had it on the second screen because, as I said, it's not really what I wanted to happen, but I need to pay attention to it because it has Flames implications. Game one, Carolina gets ahead early. Nikolai Ehlers scoring one of the fastest goals in Stanley Cup Final history, which is honestly really weird. Because as I said, both of these teams are supposed to be led by their goaltenders. So the fact that there was a goal just 25 seconds in by the former Winnipeg Jet Nikolai Ehlers, really interesting. And Ehlers wasn't done scoring his second just over 11 or just under 12 minutes after his first. And I honestly was kind of, as I said, I was half watching. I was like, oh, this is going to be a repeat of the previous rounds where Carolina just sort of walks over their opponent. But the Vegas Knights are like, we are not going down easily. Of course, Shea Theodore answers back before the end of the period, only about a minute after the goal for Ehlers' second goal. Good movement by the Vegas Golden Knights, kind of hemming the Hurricanes in their own zone the way that the Hurricanes did to Montreal on that. And it was 3 unanswered, of course. The Shea Theodore, Barbashev, and Carlson being the next 3 goals. Barbashev's goal, once again, just holds the puck in at the line. Actually, Vegas does this a couple times. Forces what is generally a very stout defensive team in the Hurricanes to kind of be chasing it a little bit. And then William Karlsson's goal was a face-off play, and Mitch Marner gets another assist. As I said, this was going to be the key to the matchup for the Canes, is how do you shut down the star that is Mitch Marner, trying to prove that Toronto was not his fault. And boy howdy, has he been having a hell of a playoff after leaving the Leafs. But we would end the second tied at 3 as Jordan Staal, one of the 2 veterans, it's Staal and Hall for the Carolina Hurricanes. What a wicked snapshot from the top of the circles, showing that with age, your shot can still be improved if you don't have wrist injuries. Well, maybe not improved. Maintained, I guess, is a better term. you have to think, for the Canes. And it would all come down to the third period for the Hurricanes. And boy, starts off with Brett Howden. Holds the line. Carolina unable to clear. In fact, Vegas holds the line a couple of times before the tip in from Howden off the Shea Theodore shot from the line. Bobby McNabb, the secondary assist on that one. But then it was a unassisted goal from Shane Gostisbehere, rather. Just a hard work muscled out, and Gostisbehere walks into about the circles and just rips it past Carter Hart. But in the final 5 minutes, it would be Tomas Hertl. Good forecheck by Vegas, the chip and chase, and just making Carolina be that step behind. Gets around Taylor Hall. Snapshot, and that is all she wrote. Of course, we saw and heard the chants going around the building, and on TikTok, you might have seen it, the no means no chants, obviously vilifying Carter Hart. I'm all for it. I think it's definitely called for, knowing what we know about his past as a young man. And I know there's a lot of Vegas Golden Knights fans upset about the "everybody hates you, Vegas" monkier, and there was a graphic at the game that showed up and has been really criticized and saying, yeah, oh, the league needs to step in. And you and your fan base and ownership and management have made this all your brand. So when other teams do actually take it to heart and take it, you are the heel in this regard. You are the team that everybody's going to hate. You made the questionable signing of Carter Hart. Like, you are going to draw ire from multiple fan bases. You're going to draw criticism from a lot of places, but really, like, I don't think anyone should be shocked when stuff like that happens. But let's talk about the ramifications. Vegas obviously winning game one, just like Montreal did, where it is that almost a shock to the system. Will it matter? Because obviously we saw last round, Carolina obviously having a bit more rest going into that game, so the rest argument was more prevalent. But hey, it is just the second loss of the playoffs for the Hurricanes. But we saw it last round where they bounced back, reforged, re-triggered everything. Is that what's going to happen here? Or is the fact that Vegas hasn't played the maximum games to get this point like Montreal had? The fact that it is a team that is coming in a little bit, I'd argue, better prepared stylistically to play against the Hurricanes. I think so. And you have to remember, like, this is a Hurricanes team that hasn't had the level of, I don't want to say struggle, but it hasn't come into a challenge yet, really. So is this going to be where we figure out, is Freddie Anderson good enough to get a team across the line? Because he's been incredible in the playoffs, as has Carter Hart, as begrudgingly as I say that. But is this finally where the wheels are going to fall off for the Canes? Have they had a sweetheart of a run facing off against potentially the worst teams on the bracket to get to the finals? Like, they got a very, very young and inexperienced Philly team in round 2. They got an Ottawa team that is plucky, but probably honestly barely made it into this playoffs. Obviously is the 8th seat in the East. And then faces a Montreal team that had played the maximum number 14 games to get to that point, just ran out of gas a little bit at the end. Like, is the fact that Carolina has had a soft road to the Stanley Cup Final, is that going to come back to bite them? I think it's a little early to say. But I think that's probably the narrative that a lot of people are going to be going with. Is it necessarily fair to this Hurricanes organization? I don't necessarily think so. But it is sometimes you have to face that adversity to enable your team to gel for a deep playoff run. And it's really just going to be interesting to watch this series as somebody who my only rooting interest in this is if Vegas wins, we upgrade a second round pick to a first, which is a big thing. Like, the fact that the Flames will potentially control the next 3 first overalls from Vegas, who you have to think, similar to the Oilers, they have to slow down eventually. Who knows if that's actually going to be the case, because Vegas has had so many kicks at the can this early into their franchise. Who knows if that's actually going to be the truth, but it really is going to be a story to watch. And of course, a couple former Calgary Flames involved on both sides of the matchup. Noah Hannafin been gone from the Flames a little bit longer. Rasmus Andersson. How many minutes did Rasmus play in that game yesterday? That's something I should have looked up before this, but I can do it live. Time on ice for Rasmus Andersson was 23:18. Led all of the Vegas Golden Knights in that stat, was a +1 on the afternoon. Noah Hannafin was even with 21:15 played. Maybe if you're Vegas, the only way you can improve is that Lazon-Coghlan pairing got victimized a little bit. Coghlan obviously only playing 8:23 and a -2 is not where you want things to be for your third pairing. However, you are only playing one more game in Carolina when you have the last change. That obviously inflates your big units a little bit more in their time on ice. Like, Mitch Marner, when he plays at home, probably isn't going to play 20 minutes because you're going to have to worry about the late change or the second change coming from the Hurricanes. And the only other thing you're a little scared of if you're a Vegas Golden Knights fan is Jack Eichel being a -1 in his 20 minutes on ice. Again, this is a player that I have no fear going forward. Like, ever since he's come to Carolina, had the surgery, he's been fantastic. But I'm getting away from my point here, talking about former Calgary Flames. Of course, on the other side, it's a guy that's a little further down the lineup, Mark Jankowski, obviously widely considered by Flames fans to be one of the largest reaches of the Jay Feaster draft era. He's been quietly very good in this playoffs for the Hurricanes. Of course, last night a -1, but in this playoffs a +2 with 4 assists. Like, I feel good for Mark Jankowski. Like, he was never gonna be the player he was hyped up to be, I don't think. But the fact that he can go into a Carolina Hurricanes team this year after injury last year, or after being traded there last year, not being an everyday player, played 68 games this season, and I don't think he's missed a playoff game. Yeah, has missed 1, but has been in the lineup repeatedly. Like, this is a player who has scratched and clawed for everything he's done in this league. I have nothing but respect for Mark Jankowski. So yeah, 3 former Flames in this matchup. And of course mentioned the big story for the Canes was the performance of Nikolai Ehlers, who has had an up and down playoffs, I think, to say the least. However, 11 points in the playoffs, like +5 in the 13 games played. Is really where you have to be happy with it as a fan of the team. Obviously missing a few games due to injury, but I think you're pretty happy with the results. But it is hard to watch as a neutral. I wonder what the viewership numbers for ESPN in the States are going to look like. Because the common sentiment I've heard is the NHL playoffs ended with the elimination of Montreal Canadiens for a lot of fans up north. These are teams that are lost a lot of social capital with a lot of fans. So I'm just wondering where that leaves everything for the viewership of the Stanley Cup. Because as we all know, the Stanley Cup is the best playoff format of any of North America's major sports. And I don't think I'm saying that and shocking anybody with that. But it's a bit of a tough watch ethically for a lot of people. It's a bit of a why do I care about this? I think a lot of people, unless you're like the true Toronto Maple Leafs hater and want to see Mitch Marner just absolutely win the Stanley Cup in his first year away from Toronto, I think that's the only reason that a lot of people are watching this, and it's a hate watch, and that can only go so far. I think that the NHL, especially in Canada, has been spoiled the last few years by, as begrudgingly I am to give them anything, having the Oilers in the playoffs has really allowed for a lot of neutral fans to at least still watch, because there is a Canadian team in the finals. Really interesting to see that. Like, even though the Flames have as I said, the reason we want Vegas to go on and win is to increase assets in the future. And who knows? We'll talk a little bit about it as the draft draws nearer, especially if that comes to fruition. Hey, are the Flames going to use that 2028 first rounder to try and move up in this draft, try and shift the timeline around a little bit? It's possible. Yeah, I think that's all of the big news from the Stanley Cup Finals. Of course, John Cooper announced as the Jack Adams Award recipient. The only other real big story in the NHL right now is apparently Anders Lee and talks with the Islanders have completely broke down, and the captain of the Islanders could be heading to free agency. You don't often see that, somebody wearing the C on their sweater going to free agency. But Matthew Darsh and his agent too far apart. Seeing that from LeBron and a bunch of other trusted sources on this. Apparently Palat and Shen are coming to the island, and this isn't the first time we've seen the Islanders get to this point with their captain. Obviously, John Tavares got to the end of his contract, couldn't make something work, and elects to return to Toronto. I think obviously a little bit different scenario with the Islanders. The Islanders in a little bit of a different phase of their franchise than they were with John Tavares, but it really is something to watch. And of course, the other thing is Flames trade rumors. And I'll talk about that before we go to the break, because the most recent rumblings I've heard is the offers for Zach Whitecloud have started to begin to come in. Obviously, the Flames got Zach Whitecloud as part of that trade that sent Rasmus Andersson to Vegas. However, the Flames would need to be blown away from the offer because he is viewed as a important veteran to this squad and going to eat a lot of those minutes that were vacated by the loss of Rasmus Andersson. And hey, the fact that he is so being used as much as he is in press and engagement with our First Nations around Calgary is a big get for the Flames. However, he does have a great cap hit, has playoff experience, and for a team like, Dallas that refused to work with Calgary to try and find a deal, you have to think, hey, is there going to be a Whitecloud Coleman deal to try and get some capital out of Dallas? As I know, as I've mentioned on the show before, the cupboard's a little bit bare for Dallas to give the Flames something they want. But hey, maybe the Flames work a deal that is Whitecloud and Coleman for the 14/7 that is rumored to be wanted by the Robertson camp in a sign-in trade. Bring in a star that you missed out in the draft lottery. Gonna have to readjust. Is Jason Robertson your target again? But here's another couple things that I just kind of was mulling through the other day. Any playoff contender needing a reliable right-handed defenseman, you look for top prospect and maybe a second-round pick. Hey, and then you can use that second-round pick as part of a further deal if you're still thinking the Ruck twins are the way the Calgary Flames need to go, like a lot of people are still thinking, despite the fact that I think it's Marcus that's flying up trade boards. I never remember. Twins are always so difficult in that regard. Or well, hey, if it's just White Club straight up for a 2026 first rounder, hey, that might be considered as a Flames being blown away. Or a upgrade on the center situation in Calgary. Obviously, that's kind of a position the Flames are okay but not comfortable in. I don't think Tyson Gross is going to be an NHLer next year. I think he's going to play with the Wranglers for a majority of next year, unlike this year, after he signs as a NCAA free agent. We'll have to see what the offers are, obviously, as well, as it takes two to tango. But hey, let's see if Dallas, maybe a team like Buffalo, or hey, if the Penguins could potentially use him to get that one last kick of the can for Sidney Crosby, if that is the way they elect to go. Another couple of teams that have been rumored is Toronto and Edmonton. I don't see the Flames ever trading with either, really, unless Toronto is trying to move on from their current pick, or try and get the Flames 6 overall, and it's part of a deal that gives the Flames a lot more freedom and assets. But that's where my thoughts end on the potential trades from the Calgary Flames. I'm going to take a bit longer of a break here because I just realized my allergies are driving me nuts. I'm going to go take a allergy pill. We'll make this break a 4-minute break, and then when we return, we'll talk about Matt Tugboat Wilkinson and his advancement, getting closer to joining the San Francisco Giants MLB roster. When we are back, Conrad Wood and the Woodshed Sports Report. We'll see you in a bit. I just realized I didn't hit the mute button on the music, or unmute button on the music again, so you had 4 minutes of just silence on the stream. That's on me. But hey, as I said, we are no longer talking about the Stanley Cup Finals. Instead, we are talking about the Tugboat call-up. Matthew Tugboat Wilkinson, of course, the former star of the Okotoks Dogs and one of the best pitchers to come out of Canada. Well, let's call it out of Alberta. Of course, you got Mako, who had his first start for the Blue Jays in that Blue Jays bullpen day. And hey, through is it 5 starts or 6 starts? Or 6 appearances, I guess it would be. Picks up his first win. I guess technically 7 games this year. 7 innings pitched. Still with that bunk 0 ERA. Only 8 hits across those 7 innings to add in 6 strikeouts. As they say, not bad for these Canadian pitchers. But yeah, now with the AAA Sacramento after leaving AA Richmond. And for anyone who's been watching Tugboat and his progression through the Dogs, and then with the Cleveland Guardians system, going through high A, AA, and now obviously the trade recently to San Fran, a couple of games at AA before getting elevated to AAA. Like, the fact of the matter is he may be the next Canadian to not just make the MLB, but thrive. Because obviously we saw him in the World Baseball Classic, and he was striking out MVP candidates and caliber. Like, he struck out Cal Raleigh, and obviously we've seen Cal Raleigh injured this year, but still, when he was at the WBC, I don't think that injury was as prevalent. But like, looking at Matt Wilkinson over his whole baseball career, like, it's been pretty insane. Like, this season, 3-2 with a 1.87 through AA and AAA with the Richmond, I think it was the Richmond Flying Squirrels, and now with the Sacramento River Cats. Squirrels and Cats and Giants, so am I. But yeah, like, just absolutely brilliant numbers. And I was talking with a couple of friends the other day who know baseball even better than I do, and like, talking about him potentially maybe needing 5 or 6 AAA starts. And if those numbers stay down, like, do you make him a reliever and call him up to the big leagues? Do you wait for a starting role to come up through injury or trade? Because, like, let's be real, it's not every day that an Alberta-born baseball player is traded for a Gold Glover. And it's not every day you join a system. How many starts did he have? With had 3 games where he goes 2-0 with a 2.40 ERA, and 15 innings pitched. And hey, doesn't get the decision in one of those games that he plays. But when San Fran says, we like your stuff, we're going to elevate you this quickly, good things are the only possibility. And hey, maybe I'll get a River Cats hat, even though I'm a Padres fan, and it sucks to have him in my division as a fan. But, like, what is the ceiling? Like, is this, we're going to give you the rest of the year at AAA and just see what we've got, let you develop a little bit slower, let you continue to get pitches in against the next generation of stars throughout the MILB? Or is this the San Francisco Giants organization saying, yeah, Cleveland was being too slow with your development, too conservative. We're going to throw a rocket strapped to your back as long as you continue your strikeout rates and your swing and miss. We're going to throw you to the moon and potentially feed you to the sharks in McCovey Cove. But hey, it's not the worst place to be. Like, hitting AAA is incredibly difficult. And like the week before he got his call up, he was the top pitcher in AA, according to their player of the week. We'll have to see, because the Guardians are known as a conservative organization with their pitchers, but if Matt at only my brain can do math at only 24, because he's a October birthday, it's really going to be interesting. Like, you have to remember, like, this is a kid that needed to go through JUCO, isn't a high school pick, isn't a 6'4" gonna gun it by you, not a Mason Miller type. He's a guy that's throwing low 90s at his top end of his range, but is still getting swing and miss everywhere he goes. Of course, last year, as we said on the show, a little bit rougher for Tugboat. But like, he has one of the best tunnels in all of baseball, where every pitch looks the same. And hey, he's in an organization that has so far isn't like the Blue Jays, where everyone's relatively healthy. But could this be a guy that, if the Giants absolutely fall off, trade off a couple pieces at the trade deadline? Is there the possibility that he is a late season call-up? I think there's more than a possibility of that. I think you aren't traded for a Gold Glover and an international draft spot. Like, have to throw that in there, no matter how much you value that. Like, is this a organization that sees him as a potential leverage guy? Like, is this just Buster Posey and co saying, nobody knows how to hit this at any level, we're gonna see if we can rush this a little bit and get you in the show and see if, hey, the MLB batters actually can figure it out? Because you have to remember, like, Matt has spider tack levels of spin rate without the sticky stuff. This is a crazy, insane, unique skill set that Matt Wilkinson has, and he's not the only one. Like, we have to look at Tristan Peters as well, because he's kind of the really kind of being pushed as the most success that any of these Dogs grads have. Like, he is becoming a guy that is getting quality at bats. The power is coming. Like, doubles line drives are the name of the game with Tristan Peters, and some pretty insane defensive numbers with average arm strength from the outfield. But he's a rotation fourth outfielder for the Sox right now. Is that his ceiling? Hard to know. Like, baseball is a strange game, and like, high OBP, stolen bases occasionally. But like, is Tugboat going to be the next dog to make the show? Is he going to be the first dog to really make a large impact in the MLB? Not saying that Tristan is not doing incredibly well on a Sox team that is doing way better than I think anyone expected them to this year. Where are the White Sox? In the division, they're second in the AL Central, which I think if you had told the world that the White Sox were second in the Central, I think they would have looked at you like you had three heads in the offseason, knowing how historically bad they've been. But they have a better winning percentage than the Blue Jays. Like, can't complain with that. Like, if there would be a game out in the AL West. So, pretty impressive things from the White Sox, and obviously Tristan Peters being a big part of that. And then obviously you have Eric Hartman. Like, it's not often you go from the fourth last pick in a draft in any sport to a top 100 prospect. Like, incredibly unheard of how insane Hartman has been to this point. Like, I don't think I can put any more emphasis on that. If you are a fan of baseball, go and look at Eric Hartman this year in the Rome Emperors. Like, this is a player that was drafted as a one-tool player. You don't get drafted at the bottom of the MLB draft generally if you're viewed as a five-tool, five-star prospect. He was drafted because he could get on base and had speed to be a steal guy. Like, as I said, he was drafted to be an Ichiro-like, where he's going to be a 1-2 in the order, gets on base 40% of the time, roll the lineup. That was the scouting report. But in Double-A this year, he's been going psycho mode, I guess is the way I'll put it. Like, the power's been there. The speed is still absolutely there. The dogs are coming. It's incredible that I get to be out there for two-thirds of the dog season, seeing this next generation of players that will be going somewhere. You have to think that Ricky Sanchez may try and battle his way through trying to get on a single A roster, maybe go the Pioneer baseball route to try and battle his way through. Or hey, go back to his family's homeland in Mexico and battle through Mexico. Like, there are so many incredible dogs, and it's so great to see a trio of them bashing down the absolute wall of the MLB and being of that level that they're being talked about at some of the next ones up. Like, obviously, there's been a little bit of a drop-off for Tugboat after his numbers in high A in 2023, when he was viewed as the best pitching prospect, or 2024, when he was viewed as the best pitching prospect, had comparisons to Nolan Ryan. But, like, Tug is absolutely showing why those were comparisons that were made. But it's just incredible to see some of these guys. Like, Tug, I knew in the COVID year when it was all Canadian players in the WCBL. Was one of my first interviews when I had my internship at Sportsnet 960. Like, just all around incredible to have this next level of Canadian talent coming through Okotoks for baseball, making an impact in MLB, and continuing to show why this Dogs organization is at the level it is. But as I said, this was going to be a shorter stream. Again, I had to take my car in for servicing and have to go pick it up and get out to Okotoks. So this will be where we call it today. On Friday, we are going to do another show. It's going to be another shorter show due to the fact that I have to be out in Okotoks. I think it might be turning into a double header from what I'm hearing. But we'll see. For myself and the Woodshed Sports Report, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back again for another short